Welcome to the DaVinci Hour podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Maxwell Cooper, and in this podcast series, I interview physicians, medical innovators, and entrepreneurs making an impact on healthcare. This podcast is produced by DaVinci Academy, a multimedia medical education company that provides podcasts, video courses, and digital textbooks. You can see more on our website, www.dviacademy.com, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/DaVinci Academy Med. This podcast is sponsored by Doc2Doc, the personal lending platform designed for doctors by doctors. Do you have some big expenses in the near future? Maybe you're moving, applying to residency or fellowship, fixing up your car or home, or starting a new practice. Doc2Doc believes that traditional lenders overestimate the risk of lending money to doctors, residents, and medical students, focusing too much on the challenges of their financial past and giving them insufficient credit for the promise of their financial future. Check out Doc2Doc's personal loan options at doc2doclending.com/DaVinci. Hey everybody, welcome back to the DaVinci Hour podcast. I'm honored this week to be joined by Eugene Borukhovich, who is the co-founder and chief operations officer of Your Coach and a digital health entrepreneur. So Eugene, welcome to the podcast. Really happy to have you here this week.
Maxwell, thanks for the invite. Honored to be here.
Awesome. So I gave, a brief introduction. Maybe tell us a little bit about, your journey to, where you are right now, kind of your experience in digital health and entrepreneurship, and give us kind of just an overview of how you got here.
Yeah, so I, as an entrepreneur, I can do a 30-second thing, but I think I'll go a little bit longer for the sake of the podcast listeners, because I'm also on the other side. And actually, maybe that's a fun fact that when we connected, I saw that you have a profession during the day, and then you're doing the podcast. That's a passion of yours. So, fun fact that I actually do two podcasts. One is more for fun. It's called the Shot of Digital Health Therapy. It's meticulously unproduced. And the other one is the DTX podcast, where we follow trailblazers, policymakers, and do interviews with digital therapeutics, which are software as interventions in the clinical space. But I'll back up how I even got to those podcasts. So born, I kind of just joke around, and I know I'm not going to go all the way back to my birth, but born from a professional perspective, born as a technologist, realized very quickly that technology is nothing unless you can put it into people's hands. So became very commercially focused. I spent 20 odd years now in healthcare, health tech. About half of my career spent in pharmacy benefit management side of the world of the healthcare. Spent portion of that time in Europe as the company at the time was expanding, and that's actually what brought myself and the family over. We spent some of the time here in Europe still. Our business is focused in US. Joined back in the day, I started a Health 2.0 chapter, not the movement. That's accredited to Matthew Holt and Indu Subaya, who started the Health 2.0 conference back in the day. And I started a chapter in New York City and met a number of amazing entrepreneurs. I was still at the PBM at the time, and I kind of got the bug. And then on one of the meetups, a gentleman, Dan Kogan, who was building a doctor rating service at the time, asked me to join. So I joined him. We ended up selling the company within 18 months or so to a publicly traded company at the time. And then, kind of fast forward, my career in the PBM, on this side of the pond, meaning the European side of the pond, the company got acquired in US, and the family and I decided to stay here. So I started a consulting company. We were living in Amsterdam, ended up selling that to a larger consulting group. And then actually sold into a big pharma a contract, and then it was one of those conversations at one of the events in the big pharma company. Do you know anybody who runs digital health or who can help us figure that out? And my payout was done, and I moved over. So I spent 3.5 years building a team in digital health. We did early stage investments, partnering, and venture building, and then finally, fast forward to Your Coach, where I joined my wife in January 2020. That was way longer than I normally do, but here we are.
No, thank you for that overview. That's really interesting. Yeah, you've certainly worked in a lot of different areas of health tech, which I think is really interesting. I'm curious, from I guess the entrepreneurship side of things, I guess what from getting involved in these different, ideas, I guess what, in your opinion, like what makes a like company worth like that you wanted to get involved with, because I'm sure you've had many opportunities presented to you over the years. I guess what about like a certain health tech or a certain technology that gets you really excited or gets you really like where I need to get involved in this?
Yeah, look, and I think I'll probably talk about the doctor rating company at the time that, to your point, was running this meetup. There were companies that were pitching, all the time. I was still at a large PBM, so to a certain extent was also quite a lot of pitching to me directly at the time. But I think that's the beauty of being an entrepreneur in the healthcare space, is that we all do things that we're passionate about, and this is about helping other people, right? And if you think about it, and then to a certain extent, it's still unfortunately the case today, it's really difficult to find care. With amazing products out there like ZocDoc as an example, still it's very difficult to navigate the healthcare system. So that was kind of the first entry point. As a matter of fact, I mean, obviously I was on the PBM side at the time, right? And so everything from copays to costs out of pocket, just, and tying that together. Now, the background and, what I love about entrepreneurs, and yes, maybe I kind of joke around that I lost most of my hair pushing, let's say, non-molecular therapies to a molecular company, or, it's not taken no for an answer. It's maybe if somebody says no, it's, to me personally, it's always no for now, but there could be a chance, right? So that persistence. Fast forward to your coach, and to your point, there's been, a number of inbounds to join advisory boards and other components of this. I'm a big believer of focus also. And especially if you are running a startup. And so, I'll kind of fast forward to your coach. The background on your coach itself is Marina, my wife. She was diagnosed with breast cancer at age of 37. In her own words, doctors saved her life, but as she discovered, health coaching is what allowed her to live it on her own terms. And when the doctor said, "You're great, you're now good to go," she felt the most broken, right? She built a platform for herself to manage, became a health coach herself, built a platform to manage her relationship. And that included everything from chat, video, setting up programs, payments, all of that. And then fast forward to today, her goal was always, how do we enable health coaching for the growing population of 9 billion, access to coaching, right? So fast forward to today, we got over 3,000 coaches on the platform. And our business model is, across the healthcare value chain. We are, and depends on the age of the listeners here, but we are kind of the Intel inside powering up health coaching operations for health and care companies. So that's a long way of saying that I think we're all passionate about what we do, and there's always, unfortunately, in many cases, are challenges that we're trying to solve for ourselves and for the loved ones.
Sure. No, that makes sense. I mean, it's that desire to, solve a clinical need or a pain point that you see. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And thanks for giving us that segue to your coach. I guess I want to take a step back for a second, for people who may be not aware, what is a health coach? How does someone become a health coach? What's like the process for that? And then
background.
and what exactly do they, like, how do they help people? What processes do they use?
Yeah, so backing up, and that's a little bit unfortunate because I think the term health coach is being used, left and right, and whether you go to undergraduate, set of graduate programs, continuing education programs, or again, you might have lost X number of pounds or kilos, depending on which side are you listening from, and anybody can really call themselves a health coach, right? Now, the good thing is, in 2012, there was a National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching that was set up, and that board took on upon themselves to put together everything from jobs to be done to accreditations of schools. So now the national board, as of this date, have now accredited over 114 schools, and that includes undergrad, grad, and continuing education programs. And there are again, I don't want to call out any specific schools, but there are nurses that are leaving the field and going to get their health coaching accreditation. They're actually doctors in their second career. As they retired, they went and learned health coaching, and leveraging some of the clinical background they have are helping patients. The way we describe this, and it's a bit of this non-clinical psychotherapy, and it's all around behavior, right? Some of the tools that coaches use are things like motivational interviewing, right? Reflection techniques. And finally, I'll kind of close it off on here for the description of this, is that if you think about a therapist, typically therapy goes back into discovering some of the challenges that an individual has. So deep underwater, if you can imagine the iceberg, right? Where coaches are much more focused on the future, right? And in one sentence, a certified health and wellness coach helps you as an individual understand, set, and achieve your goals. That's pretty much it. As simple as that.
No, that's great. I think it's a really interesting concept because as you I'm sure are aware that, medicine, especially in the US, but I think even, outside the US, is very reactive. It's something, you develop a disease, or, an individual has certain, lifestyle factors for whatever reason that, manifest over time into disease processes, versus where, if you, like you said, looking more into the future than the past, proactively. And also like the example you gave for your wife, where you get treated and then it's kind of like, where do I go from here? Because then, your oncologist or your surgeon or, whoever treated you is kind of on to the next patient. So I think it's a really interesting concept, that proactive kind of way of treating people.
Well, look, for good, bad, or indifferent, typically physicians have, 8 to 12 minutes in the office. And so majority of your time as a, not necessarily a patient, but as an individual, as a human being, you spend outside of the doctor's office, right?
Sure.
And I'm not talking about, chronic disease management or any, super acute, but, coaches are there to help. I think part of the challenge is that today these services are not reimbursable, right? And given the individual's, out-of-pocket cost today just on healthcare alone, it's very challenging to get a coach, to afford a coach. And therefore, we've been seeing a lot of the digital health companies that are surrounding their products and services for many different reasons across the whole value chain with health coaches, right? And that's kind of where we come in as well. Maybe one or two other things around kind of the validation. Back in 2019, the national board, together with the AMA, announced level 3 CPT codes. That does not mean that the health and wellness coaching is reimbursable. Those codes were out for testing. There were 3 codes that were announced. One is an initial individual session, ongoing sessions, and then with individuals, and then group session code. There was those codes were propagated across the system. Whoever used them, whoever didn't. And then the national board have collected that, analyzed that, and submitted that to the AMA on February 6th of this year. This May, the AMA has voted on those codes. I'm under NDA as I'm present in the panel until the final announcements and updates are there.
Great. Yeah, I imagine that's with so many new things you develop in healthcare, as you know from doing this before, is how you get it reimbursed. How does, because just because something's great, unfortunately, just because something's great for patients or improves outcomes, that doesn't necessarily mean you can bring it to market, because you got to get it. At the end of the day, you got to get paid for. So I'm curious, I've noticed from your platform, I guess maybe walk us a little bit through how your platform works. I noticed that you've been able to integrate it with, you can have companies that also, if they want their employees to have health coaching as well, like, I guess walk us through like that part, and then your business model too.
No, absolutely. So, first and foremost, and I alluded to this before, there's varying different accreditations and schools out there. And so while it's amazing what the national board has accomplished to date. And I think there's more to do. Real world data is always super important, right? And so a little bit of the light bulb went off that, on one side, we have amazing talents, right? These thousands of coaches that are working with their clients. And then we identify the coaches that we would love to work with based on their outcomes with their own clients, right? And then we knock on their virtual door and ask, do you want to do more work? Do you need more work? And I think a lot of the coaches are great coaches, but they're not great marketeers, right? And so we're in a way we're an atypical double-sided marketplace model, right? In a typical double-sided, you need to sort of try to match the supply and demand at the same time. First and foremost, we spent 2.5 years from the company formation and always ongoing. We do believe in this amazing community of coaches that join the platform, but we spent a lot of time on helping coaches get on the platform, get their clients on, and then that we have that network effect on the supply side happening. We're now being recommended as one of the top practice management solutions in the marketplace. And then kind of the evolution of this is, our clients are, as phase one, digital health companies. Just again, we use a very concrete example, a company called Twill, which used to be called Happify Health. They are selling their self-paced, digital therapies and tools and content to large employers and health plans, right? For members and talent. We, as I alluded to before, we're powering up the live coaching component. But the key to all of this, and this is what, you're in healthcare, we've all had experience with healthcare. It is so convoluted to navigate multitude of platforms, of apps, et cetera. Well, guess what? If an Amazon employee, that's upstream client from Twill, is already using Twill, we shouldn't have that individual, if they want to get health coaching, to go into your coach platform. So what we've done is we've exposed pieces of the technology from the practice management solution that are very easily embeddable into our client's workflow, interface, user experience. So when you're an Amazon employee or an Elevance member, you have access to Twill. You go in, if you're eligible for coaching, that surfaces for you, and your experience with coaching happens within the Twill platform. Coaches, however, sit on the platform that they know and they work with for, X number of months, years, right? They're familiar with it because to date, and I'm not going to ask you straight out, but I'm sure there's challenges in using an EMR every day. There's technical frustrations. I see you nodding your head for the, just the listeners out there. And same thing for coaches, right? Because if they're contracting, if they're going from job to job, most of the time they need to learn tech, right? That's just the world we live in. So this gives them time and focus on what they do best, which is actual coaching.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, no, I can tell you as a physician, and then as we cover, often, I'm not unique in this, where we'll cover multiple hospitals, there's multiple EMRs. And so, having that one central place where your coaches can work, in some ways I envy them. That's, it's a really nice to have like kind of just one system you need to focus on. And then I think, being able to integrate that with, like you said, so many other different companies is really, really interesting and really innovative. So I guess how do you recruit your coaches? Like how do you like vet them, recruit them, those types of things? Like what's that process like if a coach wants to get involved?
Yeah. So first of all, we don't recruit coaches. Again, first and foremost, we provide coaches a valuable platform. And if you think about any software platform out there, SaaS, PaaS, doesn't matter. Typically, platforms charge more the more clients you have, or the more, the more anything you do, you get charged more, right? We've actually gamified that model completely because, again, for full transparency, that's not where our revenue stream is from. Our revenue stream is from, companies such as Twill. And so we gamified the model, and the more clients you have as a coach, the less you pay. And this is all on the website, but you start out with the 2 clients or 1 group program for free. Once you cross that over It's $40 a month. And then typically once a coach crosses that over, they're most likely already 35 because they're earning, points towards a reduction of their monthly cost. And as a coach, you can have hundreds of customers, clients, and ultimately pay only $10 a month for that. So that's, the process is working. We don't really, sure, we do quite a lot of outreach. We also we have a very strong community on the platform itself where coaches, share, their challenges, how they solve certain cases, for lack of a better term, right? And then we also put on webinars and events to continuously help coaches level up. We're not an education institution. However, we feel that it's important to continue leveling up. So we just, just last month, as an example, we had a webinar on health coaching and women's health. And our the director of coaching operations, Ashley, took the listeners and the viewers of the webinar through what does it mean, what are some of the challenges, all of that, right? So that's the second piece, and that's part of the reason why our acquisition costs are nearly zero on that side.
That's really cool. And I guess from the patient side of things, I get how do people get, I guess, do they make like a their own profile, I'd assume, and that kind of thing, and like with any other platform, I guess, how do patients, I guess, find out about your services and sign up, and how does like the program work? Like how often do they meet with coaches and all that kind of thing?
Yeah. So first of all, we're not a direct-to-consumer, direct-to-patient as a company. So again, on one side, we give coaches tools to manage their own clients. And so part of the platform, they can invite their own clients to the platform. Yes, you need to create a profile. And then it's a space where, and actually part of it, I'll just back up real quickly. When Marina was coaching, she was with Facebook Messenger in one, WhatsApp with another, right? Everybody was using different tools. You get distractions. So this is your virtual home for health and wellness coaching as a coach, and also a quiet space for you as a client. So that's the one side. We don't do direct to consumer, direct to patient. There's no discovery of your coach from that perspective. So that's one side. We also don't do it on the B2B side, right? We are working with companies such as Twill, and again, Amazon or Elevance are their clients, and whether it's an employer health plan has communication about, Twill as a service and health coaching as embedded, right? So that's part of this wonderful model that we have here. We are not direct to consumer. As a matter of fact, because of some of the challenges that we've discussed earlier on lack of reimbursements, I think there's many people that cannot afford coaching. And if you go back to our mission as a company, is for as many human beings on this planet to have access to coaching. And we never say never, but we don't believe that direct-to-consumer model scales with this.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Having, the coaches have, recruit their own clients, because that's who they're going to come to, is for I would imagine more so the individual.
It is a chicken and the egg for newbie coaches, right? That are just coming in, and therefore we haven't launched it yet. We've been talking about it for a bit. Just prioritization. We're actually launching a mentorship program with Dr. Sears Wellness Institute, that is an educational institution for health coaching, and that's part of it. That because while we don't go direct to consumer, we do have people finding us, and it is in hundreds. I think every month. And going through the sign-up process, and then obviously we don't have anything for them. So we figured, well, how do we help these new coaches? And at some point, we will be asking those individuals if they want a, let's call it junior coach or apprentice coach for a fraction of the cost. And then, that coach will be getting those individuals as clients with a mentor coach in the background helping them along. So that's the program that we've created with Dr. Sears Wellness. We haven't launched it yet officially out there, but hoping to do so soon.
That's really cool. So I think also, I guess from the standpoint, did you see this really take off in the like with the pandemic, with like this surge in telemedicine and that? Because it's an entirely virtual platform, right? There's no necessarily in-person aspect to it, right?
Yeah, we had our largest initial growth spurt in 2020. I mean, to be fair, the kind of the minimal viable product, even before we registered as Your Coach as a company, had maybe a few dozen to 100 so coaches testing the platform, but we've seen that take off in 2020. And I think it's a combination of the virtual component. I think it's a combination of people being frustrated and lost. I mean, people just freaking need help out there, just really need help. And while coaches are not there to navigate the healthcare system, they're not, the care coordination or navigators. They are very empathetic. Many coaches that go into the field, they just want to help people. And therefore, again, this sort of the non-clinical psychotherapy approach is helping. And so we've seen the growth on our platform, not just of the coaches, but their clientele as well. And we've certainly seen a lot more demand. I mean, if you think about it, some large employers out there and health plans that are now embedding health coaching through, the benefit offering or to the health plan members, just goes to show that this profession is here and here to stay.
So, okay. Yeah. So that's really interesting. The other thing I'm wondering here is, I guess, what kind of data have you guys seen? Have you collected any data, or maybe like what, just been, just being in the industry, like what type of, studies or outcomes have you seen out there with health coaching and people utilizing your services or similar services?
Yeah. So, I'll back up, and because of myself spending, now 20 plus years in the healthcare industry, I don't want to talk about our own data just because it's not, we have not done trials. We have not done, validation on that data. And also, if you think about coaches and coachees, their own clients, it's a very long tail of offerings, specialties. And so while, yes, we have a lot of data on how and what and helping, just I want to be clear that I don't want to put that out just yet until we study that. On the B2B side, we just started commercializing that offering last year. So again, early days. Now let's back up, and what, some of the listeners that are curious can go to our website. About 3 months ago, so January, we put out a full health coaching industry report, the front lines of health. That's the full name of the report. And that goes through everything from definitions to schools, to reimbursements, to science behind health coaching at a very high level. Maybe the quick data point is that in the last decade plus, we've seen an escalation of clinical studies with health coaching as an intervention. I want to say, and for the folks that are listening, just maybe please check the report out. I want to say close to 500 studies. So the bulk of the percentage of the studies that have been done in the last 6 or 7 years, right? So we've definitely seen that escalating curve of health coaching studies. Now, what we started doing 3 months ago is actually doing deep dives on specific therapeutic areas or conditions. We actually, and other use cases, and the reason I say other use cases, for example, the caregiver community, right? What happens, as an example, if you provided a health coach to a caregiver that's caring for an oncology patient, right? Just as an example. Other better patient-reported outcomes if the caregiver is in the right state of mind. So that was our first deep dive, but we've now done heart health. Actually, last month we released employee health. We've released substance use disorder and health coaching. And every one of these deep dives have now a collection of studies. Again, these are third party. These are not our own studies to date, but third-party studies that have been done with the benefits of health coaching surrounding these specific conditions, therapeutic areas, or use cases.
That's really interesting. I'm curious, you've talked a little bit about this already, but I guess what aspects do people use health coaching the most? Have you seen? Is it, for, chronic conditions? Is it weight loss? Is it, more kind of like the psychotherapy aspect you were talking about? Is it, the psychotherapy aspects of lifestyle change, like you said? I'm curious, like which areas or which patient populations have used it the most?
Yeah, so if we're actually tracking, and this is a self-selection process of a coach selecting where they specialize in, right? And so I can, as we talk, and I can bring up the actual data for myself, but off the top of my head, we, weight management, lifestyle broadly management, mental health, and stress, top of the list, women's health broadly, and of course we have data on, within that space like fertility management. But if you back up to what a real certified coach does, and if we had a penny, by the way, that we got asked by the healthcare system, what do coaches do, and for specific therapeutic areas, we say a good coach is a coach and can coach any patient or consumer through their challenges around it. Because again, at the core of it are those behavior change techniques that coaches are trained so well in. Now, I want to make sure for your listeners that, again, this is a non-clinical and non-prescriptive service. So if you think about even weight management, a coach could also, and this is, by the way, on our platform, many of the coaches also carry other certifications and accreditations. So, for example, LCSWs or registered nurses or registered dietitians. The careful part that coaches need to be aware of is that when they're speaking to a patient or their client, they need to almost announce, for lack of a better term, that's part of the scope of practice of a health and wellness coach. Am I wearing my health and wellness coach, the non-prescriptive side? Or if I'm a registered dietitian, can I put together a plan for you? Now, if a coach is not a registered dietitian, they can still help quite a bit, because if you think about if they're working with a registered dietitian who put together a quote unquote prescribed a meal plan, coaches can go through and using those behavior change techniques to make sure that, for lack of a better term, and I hate this term, but it's the one that the healthcare system knows, you're adherent to that plan. And if not, what caused you? Let's step back. Let's step back to the balcony. Let's talk through your behaviors. What was the trigger to go grab that, seventh slice of pizza? And I'm making this up, no judgment for anyone, but just to use those examples. So I think coaches are there to help throughout any of these. Having said that, last piece on this, the context of a disease, therapeutic area, condition is super important, right? Obviously, again, just as an example, if a woman is going through menopause, of course, it is so much more impactful if you're talking to a coach who has gone through it, right? Absolutely. And that's a little bit of what we do here on the B2B side. We take certain parameters of that individual and we do, best matching possible. And those matches are sticky relationships. So it's not that it's episodal care, right?
Sure. I guess I want to ask you from the entrepreneurship viewpoint, I guess where are you guys at in like the life cycle of the company? Have you raised any money? Like, where, as far as like rolling your product out and things like that, where are you at and where are you trying to go maybe in the next year or so?
Yeah, so we're a seed stage company still. So we've raised a pre-seed right in the midst of the pandemic. We did our seed round towards the end of 21 into 22. It was a convertible note, safe note. And then we've been now very much focused on commercialization. So again, started with Twill. There's a couple of logos that I can't disclose. Another one that we didn't announce the partnership last year was with Field Therapeutics. It's an emotion recognition device. And they're working with life sciences companies and others. And then very much laser focused on the commercial growth. Where do we see this? I mean, we back to the mission always, right? And that's one of the things from an entrepreneur perspective. You can take 2 steps here, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps sideways. However steps, I think you need to be, as an entrepreneur, anchored in your mission. How that's executed on daily basis, monthly basis, that will change over time. And obviously, again, with our goal is, there's just not enough clinical talent out there. And, our belief, while technology is absolutely so imperative for access to care, right? And again, I'll use digital therapies and self-paced tools such as Twill as a great example. People need other human beings on their journey. ultimately, right? And I know it's been the craze of Chat GPT. I mean, to be fair, we filed a number of patents around leveling up coaches. Yeah, the learning models are here; they're here to stay. But we look at them as very much augmenting our brains, not replacing. Because let's face it, it's funny. I just dabbled in AI image generation for my podcast because my co-host couldn't make it. So I generated an image and I made him talk with his own voice and all of that. And as I got deeper into this, Midjourney is one of the tools. There are now like competitions on ChatGPT and Midjourney prompts. Who comes up with the best prompts to describe? People love to compete. People love to see other human beings succeed. And I hate to say it, on the reverse, people love human drama, and robots don't create drama. So good, better, and different. I think we're all here to stay. We will have our jobs will shift, our workloads will shift, but I think we're here, and the humans to help will stay here.
That's really interesting. And like you said, one of your missions is improving access to coaching. I'm curious, obviously the US, huge market, Europe would be a huge market, more developed country. But I guess how are you going outside of those markets? What's your reach been that way? And I guess what's your strategy for improving access in, more of the developing world?
Yeah, so I mean, look, let's face it, we are a for-profit entity. There are pending reimbursement discussions in US. US is probably the most progressive in the sense of adopting health coaching as even a protocol or a non-clinical intervention. We're absolutely in touch with many of health coaching associations around the world. We are always planting seeds. We're actually every year we run our global health and well-being coaching symposium. So we've already had this will be year 4, which is crazy. Pretty much every year we had something around international. Here's maybe the tidbit. It's happening around the world. So, for example, within the NHS, there's actually guidance already on how to leverage health coaches. I mean, this is an NHS published documents. And then, finally, as again, a for-profit entity, but also a young startup, focus is always key, right? So we'll go there when the demand takes us. And that's part of the reason, again, back to the mission, we're planting a lot of the seeds, we're conversing, we're engaging in the discussions, we're helping where we can, from a, running business tactically perspective, we'll get there when we get there.
Interesting. Something you keep bringing up is the laser focus, which I think is really interesting because, many entrepreneurs, and I deal with this too sometimes. Like you have all these ideas, you have all these like ways, thoughts of where you want to take your company or new products you want to develop or new marketing strategies. I guess for you and your experience, you've been doing this a while. How do you maintain that laser focus? Like, what keeps you, even if you have ideas you really, really want to do, but you realize like, in a way, at least at the immediate moment, they may be a distraction from what you're trying to accomplish in the more immediate time frame.
First thing I'll say is none of us are perfect, and neither are we. And there are always things that get you excited. But I've always said to any of my teams prior, and with our team here, is ideas are so cheap. Ideas are cheap. Execution is what actually matters. And in order to execute, you can have an idea, but you need to be able to design a test to prove or disprove the hypothesis as quickly as you can, right? Now, one of our hypotheses early on was that by providing nearly free software to coaches, we would skyrocket. What we found very quickly is that coaches were skeptical. Why is such great software free? Right. And so that's why we actually started charging for the software, just as a quick example. Another one, we have an amazing community inside the platform, which because it's the same platform that coaches and their clients use, we saw coaches joining, but not inviting their clients. We've quickly discovered that coaches were hesitant of the community tab because, well, if I'm a client, I can go find other coaches and jump ship. So we then put, a little quick thing on the top saying only other coaches will see the coach tab. Your clients don't see it, right? So I know these are like little examples, but it came out of an idea. Well, let's build a community. Great. Well, what do we need to do around, making sure that there's adoption of it? And the only way you can kind of keep moving forward is with focus, right? Because we all know, and especially this is part of the reason, in my opinion, large organizations just reach certain size and they stop growing typically, or at a CAGR of X, is that, many people have 27 different projects going on at the same time. Focus is absolutely key, whether you're in a large company or small. Just the large organizations don't allow you to focus, right?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I mean, I think it's more quality over quantity. It's kind of the age old, saying there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess wrapping up here, where can people kind of find out more about, what you guys are working on? Obviously we'll plug all, any kind of links or anything you want, but where can people find out more about your coach and what you guys are working on and get involved?
No, I appreciate the landing here. So it's yourcoach.health, and then Your Coach Health on pretty much all of the social medias. I think we even now have a TikTok account. I don't know how active it is just yet, but
That's awesome. And I want to ask you about also, you were talking about before we started recording, but maybe I want to plug your podcasts as well. Maybe tell us a little bit about your podcasts that you host and briefly what they're about and like where people can find them too.
Yeah, no, and when we connected, I responded right away because I saw your fellow podcaster. First of all, the podcast can be found on Health Podcast Network. Just if you type that into Google, that will come up, and you can search for my name. One podcast, it's myself and Jim Joyce, who is another entrepreneur, American Irish, living in Dublin, Ireland. We've known each other for many years, and we would always go to these events, digital health events. And we realized that not much actually happens on stage, right? It's the same kind of BS, corporate stuff. People just talk what they're allowed to say, but the real discussions always happen by the bar. And so when the pandemic hit, we kind of said, well, we need a stage because both of us pretty extroverted. And we started The Shot of Digital Health Therapy. We don't even have a website, but it's on YouTube and in all of the podcast players. So Shot of Digital Health Therapy. And we invite a guest from the space and we kind of shoot the stuff. I don't know. And then it is meticulously unproduced. So we don't produce it. You jump on, and we always tell people what you say is what people will hear or see. The second podcast, when I was still at Big Pharma, we were tracking with the team, the innovation team, digital therapies. For those who are listening in and don't know, digital therapies, the one sentence of it is these are software-based interventions. And probably the best example that I like to use is something like Akili Interactive, that a kid playing this Akili game, Endeavor RX, is actually being treated for ADHD, right? And this is an FDA-approved prescribable product. So this is the digital therapeutic software-based interventions. And so I was a huge fan and believer in that space. And so as a pharma company, we were one of the first members of the Digital Therapeutic Alliance, which is a nonprofit body that's putting together the coalition, for lack of a better term, lobbying on the Hill for reimbursements and other components. And so when I decided to do this podcast, DTX podcast, as simple as that, DTX podcast, and I'm doing this with a gentleman named Dan Kendall, who actually is the owner of Mission Based Media and started with Digital Health Today podcast and have been expanding with personalities like myself. He calls me the talent. So I get to enjoy doing what I do best, which is talk to people, and his team does the production of that.
That's very cool. Very cool. We will definitely, provide the links for those in the description. And lastly, Eugene, I guess where can people reach out to you or connect with you? Are there any platforms you're active on or where people can learn more about what you're doing?
So these days, LinkedIn, and I'm still probably a little bit less active these days, but on Twitter, I'm Health Eugene. So.
Okay. Perfect. Well, Eugene, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to share with your journey and what you're working on. Really excited about it and excited for listeners to learn more as well.
Maxwell, thank you for the invite.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DaVinci Hour podcast presented by DaVinci Academy. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your podcast platform of choice to catch the latest episodes. Please leave a comment or a review and share it with a friend. Lastly, you can find all of our podcasts, video courses, and books on our website, dviacademy.com. Thank you for listening.